Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
It was already 9 at night when Lucian left the hotel. Starting the car, he wanted to return to the hospital. He was still worried even though Marilyn was there with Roxan. However, just as he started driving, his phone rang. He took his phone and saw it was an incoming call from Benny. Lucian thought of what Colby had said that afternoon and subconsciously felt warmth fill his heart when he saw Benny's name on his phone screen. Daddy, are you not coming back tonight either?" Benny's voice quickly rang in Lucian's ear when the call connected. His tone was filled with dejection and anticipation. Lucian could already imagine the 3 children waiting eagerly at home. If Roxan were awake, she would have asked me to go home and comfort them. As he thought of that, Lucian slowed down and turned the car around, making his way home. While he did that, he comforted Benny. "I'm on my way home. Have you all had dinner?" Benny's tone turned happy as he said, "We haven't. We're waiting for you to come and eat with us." Benny's words moved Lucian. I got it. I'll be home soon." Benny responded cutely, "Okay." After hanging up, Lucian looked at himself through the rearview mirror. The person in the mirror had a serious expression, and his eyebrows were furrowed deeply. Anyone could tell he was in a bad mood at first glance. "I might scare the children if I go back looking like this." On his way home, Lucian kept glancing at himself through the rearview mirror to control his expression. By the time his car stopped at the Farwell residence, he had already successfully concealed all his anger. Daddy." When they heard the commotion outside, the children excitedly ran out to welcome him home. Catalina was worried and hurried to follow behind them. When she saw that Lucian had returned, she breathed a sigh of relief and went back to the living room. The 3 children surrounded Lucian and jumped up and down in excitement. Lucian felt the heavy load on his heart lighten when he saw them. Daddy, are you very busy? Did you eat dinner yet?" Daddy, I'm hungry. Let's go in quickly and eat dinner." Estella and Benny grabbed Lucian's hands affectionately and pulled him into the manor. There was also a smile on Archie's face, but he still looked concerned. Lucian knitted his eyebrows when he noticed Archie's unusual emotion. Concerned, he asked, Archie, what's wrong? Do you have something on your mind?" Archie frowned and curiously asked, Daddy, where's Mommy? She would always let us know before she went on business trips. She'd also call us when she arrived. However, there was no news from her this time. Plus, she had not picked up any of their calls either. Lucian's gaze slightly darkened when he heard Archie mention Roxan. However, he soon regained his composure and bent down to comfort Archie by ruffling the boy's hair. "Your mommy went in a rush this time, so she only had time to tell me. She went to a mountain for a medical consultation, and the signal there is bad. I'm sure she'll call us when she gets a signal." He had thought about what to say during the entire journey home. Hopefully, the children won't be able to detect any flaws in that excuse. Sure enough, the children were not suspicious of him. However, when they heard that Roxan had gone to a mountain, they kept asking questions regarding her safety there. Daddy, are there any wild animals in the mountain? Will Mommy get hurt? Is the mountain a remote area? Did Mommy go alone? When is Mommy coming home? Lucian was rendered speechless. Lucian replied to every single one of the children's innocent questions. Although he had already expected those questions, and it was not hard for him to answer them, he still felt exhausted after doing so. When faced with the children's naive and innocent expressions, it required a lot of energy on his part to come up with lies. Daddy, can't we go look for Mommy?" Estella suddenly asked. She and Roxan had only reunited not long ago, so she was unwilling to be apart from the woman, especially after knowing that Roxan had left for such a faraway place. Lucian's expression stiffened when he heard her question. He almost could not hold back and let his sadness burst out. Yet he stayed silent for a few moments. Suppressing those emotions, he pretended everything was fine as he looked at the children. I'm quite busy these days, so I can't take you. Your mommy will probably be gone for only a week. She'll be back when you go on break. With that, he quickly averted his gaze and pretended to be focused on eating dinner, afraid the children would see through his lie. Luckily, the children did not think too much about it. They were just a little disappointed. Why does mommy have to be gone for so long? I hope she'll already be waiting for us at home when we come back on Friday night. The emotions that Lucian had tried his best to suppress stirred within him once more. The pain he felt was too great that it made him breathless. He gulped before replying, She will. When you come back, your mommy will definitely be waiting at home for you. The children thought he was tired, so they quieted down and helped to put food on his plate. Lucian felt his heart grow heavier. The food he ate was now unappetizing. After dinner, the children clung to him and wanted him to play with them for a while. However, Lucian could not bear to face the children a moment longer. Stealing his heart, he handed the children over to Catalina and prepared to head out. Daddy, where are you going? Archie asked in confusion when he saw Lucian heading for the door. Are you not going to rest at home tonight? A pained look flashed across Lucian's eyes when he heard Archie's question. He stopped and rubbed his temples to control his expression before turning to look at the young boy. I have something to discuss with Mr. Queen, so I'll sleep over at his place tonight. Be good, listen to Miss Catalina, and go to bed early. Archie stared at his father, taking in the latter's expression. Daddy is acting weird. Daddy, did something happen at the company? He recalled Roxanne's previous behavior and thought Lucian had met with a problem at work. Lucian went along with the flow and answered, Yeah, but it's not a big problem. I can handle it myself. It's just that I'll be a bit busy these 2 days. Lucian still remembered how the children cried their eyes out when something happened to Roxanne the last time. There's no need for them to know about it this time. They only need to be obedient, stay home, and wait. The children pushed away their thoughts of having fun, and their expressions turned serious when they heard that something had happened at Lucian's company. Estella stepped forward and hugged Lucian, encouraging him in a sweet voice, Good luck, Daddy. You are the best. Archie and Benny hugged him too. Lucian wrapped the 3 children in his embrace as he slowly calmed down. I got it. I'll do my best. With that, he ruffled the children's hair and asked Catalina to take them to play. Then, he got in his car and left. Just then, Lucian received a call from Madeline. Frowning, he answered the call and immediately inquired about Roxanne's condition. How's Roxanne? Madeline gazed at her best friend on the hospital bed, her voice somber. There are no changes for the time being. But then, we still didn't manage to surmise anything even after discussing her condition for the entire afternoon. After saying that, she sighed helplessly. When Lucian heard her reply, his heart grew increasingly heavier. I'll head over right away. It won't do any good even if you do so when you're not a doctor, Madeline countered. Then, she admitted, I called to ask whether you've tried seeking out the Queen family. After all, the Queen family was also quite prominent in the medical field. If they agreed to help, there were high chances of determining the exact medicinal herbs Roxanne inhaled. Only when she brought up the Queen family did Lucian belatedly remember about that possible avenue. I'll do that at once. Madeline murmured in acknowledgement. Without saying anything further, both of them hung up the phone. Verily, Lucian had been so panicked that he had relegated the most instrumental help available at present to the back of his mind. In fact, if Madeline hadn't given him a call, her existence wouldn't even have occurred to him. At that moment, it was late at night. Jonathan was sitting in his study cross-legged, methodically arranging his work schedule for tomorrow with his assistant. Never had he expected the Queen family to gain a boon for nothing when they had only helped to act as a go-between. The new medicine Roxanne developed will soon cause a huge uproar in the entire medical world, and the Queen family is going to have something to do with that. It'll boost our family's reputation to some extent for sure. At the thought of the Queen family's bright future after the launch of the new medicine, he couldn't help musing inwardly. I was truly lucky to meet Roxan back then. That aside, helping Lucian to pursue her was the wisest decision of my life. She has brought countless benefits to the Queen family, from the resources I gained after the Pearson family's downfall to this new medicine now. Be it financial resources or reputation, the Queen family's development now is inextricably linked to her. I've really got to thank her when the new medicine is launched. While he was allowing his mind to run free about the unlimited potential in the future, his butler's voice suddenly rang out at the door. "Mr. Queen, Mr. Farwell is here and waiting for you downstairs." Hearing that, Jonathan abruptly corralled his thoughts. Why did you have him wait downstairs? Just tell him to come upstairs directly." Not only were their two families friends, but he and Lucian were even as close as brothers. Therefore, he had never asked the latter to wait downstairs. Just as the butler was going to head downstairs to call Lucian, Jonathan came out of the study. Never mind. It might be something serious that he came over at this hour. I'll go downstairs." Having said that, he hurried down the stairs in huge strides. As soon as he reached the landing, he spotted Lucian sitting on the couch, downing coffee like nobody's business. One who didn't know better might even assume that the man was holding a wineglass instead. Why did you come over so late, Lucian?" Jonathan's heart sank slightly. Striding over, he sat down beside Lucian and poured himself a cup of coffee. Glimpsing that the coffee in Lucian's cup was already finished, he casually topped it up for the latter. In the next second, the man beside him picked up the cup and took a long chug. He cautiously peered into the cup, only to see that only half of the coffee, which had just been refilled to the brim earlier, remained. Even the coffee grounds inside had diminished significantly. The instant he saw that, realization dawned upon him that his best friend was down in the dumps. Could it be that something has happened to Roxan? Other than that, I can't think of any other reason for him to be in such a foul mood. Why are you here alone? Where's Roxan? Jonathan gingerly put that question forth, but at the mere mention of Roxan, the atmosphere in the room dipped frightfully. He hastily zipped his mouth and sat there silently, waiting for Lucian to speak first. An indeterminate time passed before the man's voice broke the silence. He sounded bone-tired. Something has happened to Roxan. Although Jonathan had long since drawn that conclusion, his heart still clenched when he heard Lucian's tone. Based on his understanding of the man, Roxan must be in real trouble this time. Is there anything I can do to help? He voluntarily offered. Putting down the cup of coffee, Lucian leaned back against the couch. He lifted his hands and covered his eyes, his voice beyond grim. Jack poisoned her, and she has been unconscious for a day and a night. I got a lot of doctors to check her over, but they are all helpless about her situation. They can't even tell what poison exactly is afflicting her. At his words, sheer shock deluged Jonathan. Jack. He actually dared to. Mid-utterance, he noticed Lucian's grave expression. Immediately, he forcibly suppressed the surprise within him and racked his brain to help figure out a solution. Calm down first. After so many years in the medical industry, the Queen family has some connections. Many renowned doctors have gone into seclusion, and you can't hire them even if you've got money. But if I use my grandfather's name and implore them for help, I can probably budge one or two of them. I'll go and have someone send the invitations right away. As he said that, he whipped out his phone and called his assistant, ordering the latter to prepare the invitations that night itself before sending them out to those skilled doctors living in solitude. Lucian thanked him in a hoarse voice. Thank you. However, Jonathan frowned in displeasure. There's no need for that between us. If we were really standing on formality, wouldn't I have to prostrate myself before you and Roxan in gratitude when you've both helped me so much? The Pearson family's resources alone had already enabled the Queen family to expand to almost double its scale in the past. On top of that, The Queen family would enjoy an even more esteemed reputation when Roxan's new medicine hit the market. Lucian merely heaved a long sigh without responding to that. Perceiving his worry, Jonathan coaxed, Don't worry. Someone as kind as Roxan will definitely pull through. In light of her having saved innumerable patients, God won't take her away so easily." Despite his reassurance, he wasn't all that confident about it. After all, the Damaris family had withdrawn from society for the past few years and had a century of experience in the research of medicinal herbs. I wonder what kind of insidious tactic Jack used. Hopefully, that's true. Lucian sat upright. He lifted a hand and picked up his cup of coffee, hoping to use the beverage to calm the turmoil within him. Unbeknownst to him, his hand holding the cup trembled uncontrollably. Witnessing that, Jonathan was shocked to the core. He had always known that Lucian loved Roxan deeply, but he had never expected Roxan's current situation to scare him to such a degree. That said, he was also aware that it was only before him that Lucian could reveal this side of himself. When Lucian stepped out of this house, he would once again become the invulnerable Mr. Farwell in the eyes of outsiders. At that thought, Jonathan inexorably felt sorry for him. He knew better than anyone how difficult it had been for Lucian and Roxan to end up with each other. Unexpectedly, such a tragedy transpired when they had gotten together at long last. In truth, she could have avoided this. Out of the blue, Lucian's voice drifted into his ears, dripping with self-recrimination. Following that, Jonathan regarded him in puzzlement. As she had been negotiating with Jack because of the new medicine, and I helped by giving her a suggestion. For that reason, she was exceedingly persistent and sought him out repeatedly. Never had it crossed our minds that every time they met created an opportunity for him to make a move against her. If I hadn't said anything, she undoubtedly wouldn't have been bothered about the profit split. And if she had agreed to Jack's proposal of splitting the profits in half, the subsequent events wouldn't have happened. Jonathan didn't know what to say in response to Lucian's remark. All he could do was comfort the latter awkwardly. This isn't on you. The fault lies with Jack. No matter what you did or didn't do, he would have still looked for an opportunity to make a move against Roxan. After he had said that, something occurred to him, and he continued, he must have an ulterior motive in doing this. I wonder what it is. Lucian hadn't planned on keeping it from Jonathan's knowledge. Hence, he told the latter briefly about the negotiation between him and Jack when they met just now. Has he lost his mind? After Jonathan heard about Jack's terms, incredulity showed on his face. Never mind that he wants 10 of Farwell Group's most profitable subsidiaries, since Lucian can swiftly make up for them with his capabilities. But what right do they have to make decisions on Roxan's behalf about her research institute's collaboration when she's still in a coma? Worse still, he even wants Lucian to marry another woman. What exactly is his motive here? Meanwhile, repulsion brimmed in Lucian's eyes. I have no problems with all the other terms other than the final one. I'd never agree to it. I finally won her over, and I'll never let her go again. Even in death, she has to die with me. Jonathan sensed the terrifying aura emanating from the man, but he had no idea what was running through his mind then. For some inexplicable reason, his heart jolted. Nonetheless, the man beside him was still his childhood friend. As such, he merely shuddered but composed himself in the next heartbeat. Nodding, he seconded, Jack has gone too far, his greed knowing no bounds. Sooner or later, he'll reap the consequences of his actions. Subsequently, the two of them solemnly discussed the plan 3 days later if they still couldn't find a way to rouse Roxan by then, and Jack remained adamant about those 3 conditions. At that moment in time, Freda was in the kitchen. It so happened that she heard Lucian arriving when she came downstairs to get herself a glass of water. Because of the foolish things she did in the past, she hadn't the nerve to face the man. Thus, she wanted to wait until he had gone upstairs before sneaking back up. Little did she expect her brother to come downstairs and for the 2 men to begin chatting on the couch. As she listened to their conversation, she didn't dare make a single peep. In fact, she desperately suppressed her breathing, afraid that they would discover her. Upon hearing her brother and Lucian's exchange in the living room, she couldn't help feeling horrified. While she harbored no fondness toward Roxan and was very much opposed to her getting together with Lucian, she had never imagined that the woman would suffer such a tragedy. Oh God, Jack actually poisoned her, and even all the acclaimed doctors are helpless about it. Verily, she was glad that she didn't stupidly offend Jack back when she joined hands with Aubrey. I never expected him to be such a two-faced hypocrite. After the initial relief, she inexorably started worrying. If something truly happens to Roxan because of Jack's poison, my plan with that man will fall through. Upon realizing that, she felt that she needed to make time to contact that man and inform him about the matter before discussing their next step. In the living room, Jonathan and Lucian were wholly focused on Roxan's matter to the point that they didn't notice someone else's presence in the kitchen.
It's later.
You're still going back to the hospital? Jonathan asked when they ended their discussion at midnight. In response, Lucian dipped his head a fraction.
I worry.
Therefore, Jonathan didn't try to convince him to stay but saw him to the door.
I'll go and visit Roxan tomorrow.
Drive safe. Lucian nodded wordlessly before leaving. Shortly after, the headlights of the Bentley lit up, and Lucian drove off.
Have you heard it all?
Jonathan watched as Lucian's car disappeared from his line of sight before he whirled around and returned to the living room. With his eyes trained in the direction of the kitchen, he put that question forth in a deep voice. Right then, the living room was empty, and Freda was the only person in the kitchen. Hence, it went without saying who that question was meant for. Her heart clenching slightly, Freda guiltily stepped out of the kitchen.
You knew I was here, Jonathan?
Honestly speaking, Jonathan had already noticed her presence when he came downstairs earlier. However, he was also aware of his sister's intentions, so he didn't expose her. On the contrary, he tried his best to divert Lucian's attention. On several occasions the man nearly noticed her. You're not allowed to leak out a single word of the conversation between Lucian and me earlier. If I were to learn that you spoke of it to someone else, don't dream of getting involved in anything related to Queen Group anymore for the rest of your life. He warned, a stern expression on his face. Hearing that, Freda bobbed her head hesitantly. Jonathan eyed her with a frown, exasperation flooding him. He then painstakingly analyzed the pros and cons for her benefit. The interests of Queen Group and Farwell Group are closely linked together. If something were to happen to Farwell Group, Queen Group would similarly be affected. If others were to know that Lucian is currently being threatened and has no time to handle other things, they would seize the opportunity to attack Farwell Group. Consequently, Queen Group's interests would also suffer tremendously.
I hope you understand that much.
Guilt brimmed in Freda's eyes, but still, she steeled herself to continue denying it. It wasn't until he mentioned Queen Group that Freda sobered up.
I got it. I won't tell anyone about it.
Jonathan stared at her for a long time. Just when Freda could no longer stand the probing scrutiny and wanted to beat a hasty retreat upstairs, Jonathan's voice rang out slowly. A matter plaguing the Farwell family is also the Queen family's concern. Since you heard everything, help to think of a solution as well. As soon as Freda heard that, her expression stiffened imperceptibly. Faking a chuckle, she declined. Jonathan, the Queen family's connections are in your hands. Even if I want to help, I don't have the capability to do so. You naturally have your own connections. Jonathan drawled expressionlessly. At that, the smile on Freda's face almost slipped. I don't quite understand what you're saying. Where would I get connections? Jonathan's brows knitted together, and his voice turned increasingly somber. I believe that you were close with Aubrey back then for the sake of the Queen family. At present, Jack is already provoking us. If you really care about the Queen family, don't be a fool anymore and continue siding with outsiders. Guilt brimmed in Freda's eyes, but still, she steeled herself to continue denying it. It wasn't until he mentioned Queen Group that Freda sobered up. "I got it. I won't tell anyone about it." Alas, Jonathan didn't allow her any opportunity to speak. "A few days ago, you left the office in the afternoon but only returned late at night. Who did you meet up with?" No sooner had his words fallen than Freda's expression changed drastically. Unfortunately, Jonathan cut her off coldly. Don't tell me you went for a drive. I've already sent someone to investigate your whereabouts. That day, you drove to a mansion in the suburbs. The man who sent Aubrey away lives there, yes." Thanks to the foolish things she did previously, Jonathan had practically zero trust in her. That night, he was still worried after she had explained things and sent someone to investigate the matter. Unexpectedly, the investigative results validated his suspicions. Freda had lied to him again. He wanted to know what exactly she was planning with that man, so he had feigned ignorance about it. Right that moment, however, he couldn't help hoping that man would be of help since he must have his own connections. No matter what you've done to Dr. Jarvis with Aubrey in the past, this is the best chance for you to make amends for your mistakes. As that man was capable of sending Aubrey away right under the Farwell family's noses, he undoubtedly has some impressive connections. Perhaps he knows someone who can help Dr. Jarvis, he urged. A flash of hesitation flittered across Freda's eyes. But at the thought that Roxan was an indispensable part of their subsequent plan, she ultimately relented. Okay, got it. I'll go and ask him about it." Thereafter, Jonathan added, "Don't contact him anymore after the incident this time. Someone willing to help Aubrey is definitely no decent man." Freda was chagrined inwardly, but she still agreed docilely on the surface. Then, she spun on her heel and went upstairs. When she returned to her room, she called the phone number Sean gave her for the first time. In no time, someone answered the call on the other end of the phone. Why did you call me at this hour, Miss Queen? Are you missing me?" Sean's voice was incredibly suggestive. Enthralled by his voice, Freda fell into a trance for several seconds. Following that, Sean chuckled, his eyes sparkling with devious glee. "Should we truly have a telepathic connection?" That caught Freda off guard. Who? What do you mean?" I happened to be thinking of you, and you called me. What's that if not a telepathic connection?" Sean teased. Splotches of crimson slowly stained Freda's face. She went silent for a few seconds before she finally succeeded in suppressing the shyness and delight within her. Feigning calmness, she stated, "I'm seeking you out for something important." Sean's expression remained indifferent, but he sounded earnest beyond words. What is it? As long as it's something to do with you, I'll definitely spare no effort." To him, it was truly a piece of cake to manipulate a naive girl like Freda. When Freda heard that, her heart fluttered once more. Her voice also softened considerably. Roxan has been poisoned, and no one is able to cure her for the time being. I'd like to ask whether you are acquainted with any skilled doctors." "What? Something has happened to Roxan?" In a flash, Sean's expression turned frosty. "If my memory serves, she's Lucian's lover. Yet, someone dared to make a move against her? Who did it? And what is the culprit's motive?" Sean questioned icily. The change in his tone took Freda aback momentarily before she gathered her wits about her. It was Jack Damaris. From the conversation between my brother and Lucian, I heard that he seemingly wants to use Roxan to blackmail Lucian, hoping to obtain some benefits from the latter." Him. What a joke. Is he even worthy of having designs on the Farwell family? He's merely from a prestigious family in the medical field. Clearly, he regards himself far too highly. How dare he steal my prey from me? Sean snorted disdainfully. The Farwell family's rival can only be me. If anyone dares to interfere, that's akin to challenging me. His tone struck terror into Freda. In a daze, she felt like she had again seen the man who negotiated with Aubrey that night. Her attraction toward him instantly disappeared into thin air. Fearful, she remained quiet, not daring to utter a word.
I got it.
There's indeed a renowned doctor living in seclusion in the north. I'll send someone to invite him over immediately. Tell Lucian not to agree to Jack's terms.
Sean asserted.
If Farwell Group were to be affected by this matter, it'd be downright boring for me when I make my move against Lucian in the future.
Freda acquiesced softly.
Seemingly sensing her fear, Sean gentled his voice.
I'm only helping because of you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't care whether Roxan lives or dies.
Despite all he had said mere moments ago, Freda couldn't help believing him. She again found herself falling for him. If I manage to convince that doctor to accept my invitation, I'll be coming back with him tomorrow.
Will you come and pick me up?
Sean coaxed, his eyes narrowed a fraction. Unbidden, Freda's heart skipped a beat.
Yeah.
Just tell me the time. Chuckling deeply, Sean fed her a few more honeyed words before hanging up the phone. At the hospital, Madeline let the experts enter the ward, as she was worried sick about Roxan. The group stayed in the ward from the afternoon until midnight to figure out a treatment method, but they did not manage to reach a conclusion. Still, Madeline was unwilling to give up. As a doctor, she badly wanted to wake Roxan with her own ability. However, the experts had already stayed up the whole night yesterday. As most of them were old, they were exhausted after working for so long. Left with no choice, Madeline could only let them rest first. Roxan, you have incredible medical skills.
Can you give me a hint and tell me how to save you?
As the ward quieted down, Madeline turned to look at Roxan on the bed and murmured while holding her hand.
I wish I was the one lying here instead.
If I were the one unconscious right now, Roxan would definitely know how to save me. Just as Madeline was immersed in despair and guilt, she saw Roxan's eyelashes tremble a little.
Madeline widened her eyes.
Thinking that it was just her imagination, she tightened her grip around Roxan's hand and asked, Roxan?
Can you hear me?
Slowly, Roxan's eyebrows furrowed together. It seemed as if she was about to wake up. Madeline was certain she was not seeing things. She hurriedly stood up and pressed the call bell beside the bed. It hadn't been long since the experts left the ward, so Madeline strode out of the ward and yelled at them to return. The experts couldn't help but feel nervous. What's wrong, Dr. Xander? Did Miss Jarvis show any response? Nodding fervently, Madeline said, hurry here and take a look.
I think she's about to wake up.
Then she walked back into the ward to check on Roxan. The experts followed her and came in one after another. They stared at Roxan, their sleepiness totally gone thanks to the news that she might be waking up soon. Roxan's frown deepened. Even though she was unconscious, her face contorted with pain. An expert pointed out uneasily, I don't think this is a sign of Ms. Jarvis waking up. It's more like... He trailed off and didn't dare to continue for fear that his words would come true. Madeline was also a doctor herself, after all. When she saw Roxan's expression, she soon understood what was going on. Get ready for emergency treatment. Everyone present was an experienced expert, and the ward was well equipped with all kinds of equipment. They quickly decided on the attending doctor, and the others cooperated with him deftly. Roxan seemed to be in terrible pain. Her face flushed red, and she began gasping for air. Madeline was holding Roxan's hand when she suddenly felt the latter clutching her hand in return. The grip was so strong that it hurt Madeline. Lowering her head, Madeline could see veins popping out on Roxan's arm.
Roxan.
Madeline's eyes turned red with tears. How awful could her pain be that she's gripping me so tightly while she's unconscious? What in the world did Jack do to her? Then and there, Madeline made up her mind that she would never let that hypocritical Jack off.
Don't be scared. You'll be fine soon. I will cure you. I promise I'll cure you.
Despite knowing that Roxan couldn't hear her, Madeline spoke reassuringly and firmly. After some time, The doctor in charge of treating Roxanne wiped away his cold sweat. With a somber expression, he said, Miss Jarvis is in pain because her blood vessels are contracting and expanding repeatedly. We can't let this go on. We have to use sedatives on her. When Lucian reached the ward and noticed the experts were nowhere to be seen in the corridor, his heart lurched. He walked up to the door and opened it. The expert's words happened to reach his ears at that moment, and his face darkened immediately. Mr. Farwell. At the sight of Lucian, the experts lowered their heads in guilt. Before Lucian left, he had asked them to take good care of Roxanne. Now that he saw Roxanne in such a state, they would likely be held accountable for it. Lucian stalked to the bed. Looking at Roxanne's expression of pain, he said, Don't mind me. Help her first. Even when Colby tampered with the experiment last time, Roxanne did not appear to suffer this much. What drug did Jack use on her that she's hurting so much even when she's unconscious? As Lucian looked at Roxanne, he felt as if he could sense her pain. His heart hurt so badly that he almost could not breathe. Although Madeline was concerned about Roxanne, she stepped aside to make space for Lucian and went to help. Standing beside the bed, Lucian held Roxanne's hand. He felt so heavy-hearted that he couldn't utter a word. How he wished he was the one lying there and suffering instead. After being injected with sedatives, Roxanne looked visibly better. Still, the atmosphere was tense as everyone stood there, low-spirited. While the sedatives temporarily relieved Roxanne's symptoms, vasoconstriction was no trivial matter. Roxanne could die from an aneurysm at any time, but they couldn't find the cause of her vasoconstriction. Following another round of emergency treatment, Roxanne's condition was finally under control. The experts were all drenched in sweat and totally drained. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. Go ahead and rest. Let's continue to think of treatment methods tomorrow, said Madeline before escorting the experts out of the ward. With that, only 3 people were left. Roxanne's face was as white as a sheet as she breathed faintly. While Madeline and Lucian watched her, they felt heartbroken. Did you drop by the Queen residence? What did Mr. Queen say? Asked Madeline. Lucian closed his eyes to contain the churning emotions within him before repeating Jonathan's words in a grim tone. Madeline's expression turned solemn. So that means there's nothing the Queen family can do now. I don't know how long we'll have to wait for those recluse legendary doctors.
Roxanne.
Madeline wasn't sure if Roxanne could hang on until then. At that thought, Madeline finally lost control of her emotions. With tearful eyes, she said, I've been a doctor for so long, but this is my first time seeing an unconscious patient showing such violent reactions. Just how much pain is Roxanne in? They couldn't imagine how Roxanne could withstand such suffering with her petite body. I will cure her. She'll be okay, Lucian declared as he gripped Roxanne's hand. Madeline didn't know to whom those words were directed. Lucian would never allow things to end just like this. They hadn't even held their wedding and done the things they didn't get to do before. Holding back her tears, Madeline stated, the 3 days Jack mentioned might be the time it would take for the drug to take effect. It hasn't even been 3 days, yet Roxanne is already being tortured like this. Madeline couldn't bring herself to imagine what would actually happen to Roxanne after 3 days. Just the possibility of Roxanne dying due to pain while she was in a coma made Madeline feel suffocated. When Lucian heard Madeline's words and turned to look at Roxanne's ashen face, he felt as if someone was squeezing his heart forcefully, making it struggle to beat. If what Madeline said is true, and I can't find a way to cure Roxanne in 3 days. At the thought of the ordeal Roxanne might face and the possibility that he could lose her because of that, Lucian could no longer suppress his rage. At that moment, a murderous air surrounded him. He had thought that the worst thing that could happen was him dying with Roxanne. However, they still had 3 children who grew up in incomplete families. The 5 of them had just reunited, and it would be too cruel to abandon the 3 children again. As those thoughts fleeted across Lucian's mind, He was overcome with the urge to tear Jack apart. This matter happened because of me. Why didn't Jack target me? Why did he have to do something so inhuman to Roxanne? Mr. Farwell, sensing the murderous air in the ward, Madeline was startled. Don't be like this. I believe that you'll find a way to wake Roxanne. She'll get through this, even if it's for the sake of you and the children. I will never let Jack Damaris off. Lucian growled with a dark look. He wanted Jack to end up much worse than Colby. Hatred painted Madeline's countenance. Of course, but Roxanne is the priority now. 3 days will pass by quickly. We have to come up with a way soon. Clenching his jaw, Lucian forced himself to calm down. He let go of Roxanne's hand and said to Madeline, I will. You must be tired after working the entire day. Go and get some rest. Madeline was unwilling to leave, but she knew Lucian felt as terrible as she was. Maybe he wants to tell Roxanne something in private. With that in mind, Madeline cast a reluctant glance at Roxanne before turning to leave. The door shut with a heavy thud. As Lucian turned back to gaze at the woman on the bed, dejection clouded his features. Roxanne, if I fail to think of a way after 3 days, don't hate me after you wake up. Madeline's words just now had left a huge dent in Lucian's heart. When he returned earlier, Roxanne had already been in agony for a while, so what he had witnessed might not be her most painful moment. I will never let Jack Damaris off. Lucian growled with a dark look. Lucian was uncertain if Roxanne would really be able to get through the 3 days. And even if she could, Lucian could not bear to let Roxanne undergo such torment. Upon recalling the scene earlier, Lucian was overwhelmed with a sense of powerlessness. For the first time in his life, he felt useless. He had repeatedly promised Roxanne that he would protect her and the children, yet he was the one who put her in this state. I'm really useless, aren't I? Lucian lifted Roxanne's hand to his lips and kissed it softly, wanting to seek solace. Only Lucian's low voice could be heard in the ward as he murmured, if I still can't find a way after 3 days, then I can only agree to Jack's request. If you want to hate me after you wake up, hate me all you want. That's still better than you forgetting me. At least I can see you being alive and well if I agree to his request. If they really had to reach that point, Lucian didn't mind letting Roxanne go far away with the 3 children. He'd rather have her hate him and stay away from him than see her lying in the hospital bed like a lifeless person.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.